Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Passball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com. Happy to be with you for the last Passball Show of the year 2017, getting ready for a new year. Lots of different things we're going to discuss today. We're going to get into Pielli's football picks as we get towards the end of the program, and we're going to talk a little NHL today, but we're going to start the program by talking with a man who is a broadcaster for the San Diego Padres and spent many years pitching in the major leagues in the 1980s and the 1990s, and that's Mark Grant. Mark, John Pielli over in New Jersey, I appreciate you having a couple minutes.
I am so glad to join you. You know, I hope you guys are keeping warm back there because I hate to tell you, it's like low 80s where I live. I'm in flip-flops, shorts, and a T-shirt. So how's life on your end?
Hey, listen, if anybody ever wants to just relax and have great weather all the time, all year round, I would suggest you move to San Diego, which, by the way, is a beautiful, beautiful place out there. Yeah, just the scenery and everything around it. It's just, I'm sure it's a comfortable place to live.
We are very, very fortunate to live out here. Thank goodness for baseball. You know, it's funny, John, how things work out, being traded to the Giants and the Padres in 1987. So when that trade was made, I played here. I went on to play for three other teams, but made my home here. I've been every year ever since, and I don't plan on moving anywhere else. Definitely paradise. It's
funny. You kind of led me into it, but I got to be honest. When I was a kid, I followed baseball and kind of was able to follow all teams. So whenever there was like a major trade, I found an interest to want to study the players that were involved in that trade. So I actually remember hearing about the trade as a kid. In 1987, you were involved in a multiplayer trade between the Giants and the San Diego Padres. It's one of those things that just kind of rings a bell to me. And I remember it happening. Obviously, it involved Kevin Mitchell and Craig Lefferts and Chris Brown and Dave Dravecky. Was this something that surprised you when you were traded?
It kind of did. I mean, it worked out for the better because, the Giants, they were on the push to trying to win a pennant that year. They needed a couple of extra parts, and what Roger Craig and Al Rosen wanted was a veteran presence in their rotation. That was the left-hander Dave Dravecky in that deal. They got some pop in the lineup with Kevin Mitchell, who eventually was had an unbelievable career year with the Giants, and they got to the playoffs. And for me, I went to a team that needed pitching, so it allowed me to get the ball every 5 days and try to hone my craft at becoming a starter. It didn't work out that way. I eventually went up to the bullpen, but I was happy with my 3 years here in San Diego, and it all worked out for the best.
Yeah, it did, and I tell you, the significance about that trade, it always stands out. There was a future MVP traded for a future Cy Young Award winner.
Yeah,
and that's something that you see very little, especially. I don't see that many trades like that are involving that many impact players now. But obviously, it was something that was a lot more prominent in the '80s. But most importantly, like the '50s and '60s, there was trades that involved 10+ players going from team to team. And it's amazing to see a trade like that could be so beneficial to both teams too. Because
and you know what else, John, that sticks out in that trade? Think about it. It was within the division too.
Yeah.
And you don't see that too often. The National League West, the Giants and Padres swapped players, and that's something that it happens. But even back in the day, it didn't happen that often. But that was one of those trades, a 7-player deal that definitely helped both sides.
No, it absolutely did. And, of course, Mark, you've had a chance for a long time as a broadcaster with the San Diego Padres and a chance to work many years with the great Dick Enberg, who, of course, passed away last week at the age of 82, a guy that certainly I've mentioned numerous times, one of the few people in the world of broadcasting that I looked up to because of the way that he presented himself, the fact that he represented everything that was great about broadcasting, and to me, was an inspiration to me to want to do it. And obviously, you had the opportunity for many years to work with him. A little bit about what goes through your mind when you think of the impact of Dick Enberg and what he meant to you.
He is definitely on the Mount Rushmore of announcers, if there ever will be one. A man for all seasons who did every sport and did it perfectly. Whether it was tennis, basketball, football, baseball. I mean, he was the type of guy who planned on putting on a perfect telecast or broadcast, whether it was radio or TV. There's a couple things that Dick kind of taught me along the way. One was be prepared. I don't think I worked with anybody who was more prepared than Dick. Hours and hours of just getting prepared, so he's not caught off guard to not knowing something. And try to be perfect. And Dick even said, we were not going to be perfect. There's never going to be the perfect telecast or broadcast, but we can prepare ourselves to try to be perfect. So if you fall short a little bit, at least it's not going to be a terrible thing to where, you were prepared and trying to be perfect that particular night. And he brought his game every single night. And, when you think about it, John, it said, nowadays, we have so many sports channels, ESPN 1, ESPN 1000, whatever.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's so diluted. You turn on a college football game, you turn on a college basketball game or whatever, and there's hundreds of different voices who do those sports. But yet, back in the day, before the cable TV, it was the network stuff. And if Dick Enberg was doing a network game, you knew it was a huge game. And he was the voice of my childhood. I loved all sports. Basketball, football, baseball, tennis, golf, whatever. And if you heard his voice, you knew that you tuned in, you paid attention because it was a huge game. It's a terrible loss. I thought Dick was going to go on and live to 100. I really did. He'd walk every day. He took care of himself. He ate right. He kept himself busy. So, this one hurts.
Now, of course, having a chance to work alongside him, that last year, did he give you any indication that was going to be the last, or did he kind of wait towards the end? Because obviously that season going back to 2016 is going to be remembered for the year that Vince Scully retired. That was his last year. And I didn't notice it. And I don't know, you were a little closer. You had a chance to speak with him every day. I didn't know that, Dick Enberg was retiring or he was going to be done doing Padre games at the end of the season until, like, the last week.
Yeah, in fact, it kind of went under the radar because at the end of the 2015 season in September, he made an announcement on the air that he was going to have 2016 as his final season and then move on to other things. He was still associated with the club. And he would hang out. He would kind of an ambassador to the club. But he made it clear that in the fall of 2015, that the 16 season was going to be his last. And, like I said, from the first game that we worked together for 7 seasons to the last game, he was prepared as ever. He was gung-ho. He loved his work. And he just had a tremendous passion for being on the air and sitting in front of that microphone and trying to tell the story of a game that's happened that night.
I tell you, one thing that, I could kind of come up with a list of things on my own. And just listening and watching him do games, all different types of sports and stuff like that, of things that I learned from him. If there was one or two things that you think as a broadcaster or as a person you learned from Dick Enberg, what would it be?
Well, when I first met him, after hearing him on the air and then meeting him, it was everything I expected. And like any great announcer who goes on for a long, long time and that is successful, one thing that is for certain is that people skills come into play. I met Vin Scully a long time ago as a player, and he couldn't be more generous of a man with his time, being kind. And Dick Enberg is the exact same way. Fans would come up to the booth, he'd have a chance to chat with them, and whether it's for 30 seconds or 30 minutes. Gave you the impression that, hey, you know what, wanted to be a friend, was interested, and wanted to be somebody who, when you walk away, you feel good about meeting him. And that's the one thing that goes a long way. People skills, and as I mentioned earlier, being prepared. You can never be too prepared. And, he was a tremendous writer. A lot of people might not realize, but Dick was a teacher by trade. In fact, I kind of stole from Don Drysdale when he worked with Dick doing Angels games on radio back in the 60s and 70s, that he called him the professor. And the reason why is because, he was a teacher by trade and then got into broadcasting. So that teacher really came out in Dick. And think about it, the lesson plan, you have to teach the class, you have to Be prepared because, if they ask you questions you don't know as the teacher, guess what? Who's looking like the fool?
Of course.
And that was Dick's approach. And it made sense once I got to know him over the years. Not only did I see the great broadcaster, but I saw the great teacher in Dick Enberg as well.
Yeah, once again, John Pielli, joined by former Major League pitcher and current broadcaster for the San Diego Padres, Mark Grant. Now, you in regards to broadcasting in general, you mentioned this is a person that you remembered, as a player, and back in the day from the national level and everything that he was able to do. When you had the chance years later to all of a sudden work alongside him, did you notice anything different as far as what you had admired when you were a player and you knew him as a national broadcaster?
No, you know what? It was pretty much the same as what I would expect sitting next to Dick. Just hearing his voice in my headset, sitting 2 feet away from him was something that I had to pinch myself and realize here was a 10-year-old kid watching UCLA basketball with my dad, and hearing Dick Enberg do the play-by-play, and then fast forward, and I'm sitting next to him doing Padres baseball, and that's the one thing that really, when it really hit me, that oh wow, this is actually happening. And another situation where it was his first year, we were in Arizona early in the season, and that's usually when March Madness is going on.
Yeah.
And sometimes in April, where the championships, and me and my producer at the time, Dick invited us up to his room to watch the Final Four, and he ordered some appetizers and ordered a couple bottles of wine, and here I am sitting in Dick Enberg's room watching the NCAA Final Four, which he used to call.
Yeah.
And it was very, very cool.
Now, did you ever get a sense from him, or did he ever let on whether there was a sport that he preferred more than anything? Did he love baseball as much as it seemed like he did over other sports?
Baseball was his first love, and he said that all the time. Ever since he was a kid growing up in Armada, Michigan, he fell in love with the Tigers. He fell in love with baseball. He played a little bit. He actually coached at San Fernando Valley State, which is now Cal State Northridge.
Okay.
He coached up there for a little bit. And there's a picture, I'm sure you can find on the internet, of the professor in his uniform on one knee with the fungos and the bats in back of him. He's got the stirrups working, and it's kind of cool. So, but yeah, baseball, he says it was his first love, and he says by far, all the great announcers, through the course of time are announcers that have announced baseball. And you think about it, it's a tough sport to do because there's a lot of downtime, but by head and shoulders above all the rest, baseball was his first love.
I tell you, one of the things that I learned when I was in broadcasting school, and it was tough to do. You needed to practice it a little bit. But if you were doing highlights or you were describing action that may not be as descriptive, you're going to have to come up with a lot of filler words and a lot of stories. And I thought Dick Enberg did that great, the way he was able to just transition from action that may be a little slow on the field, but he never seemed to miss a beat. And he just kept moving on to things. And a lot of that goes to the preparation that you mentioned earlier, that there were very few that were any more prepared to do their job the way Dick Enberg did.
When you made a good point, because when there was a slow game, not a lot of action, he wrote down a lot of stuff in his scorebook. At the bottom of his scorebook, he'd have little bullet points, whether it was this day in baseball history, or we'd go off the map and talk about music or something, or we talk about, whatever, just to, change it up and keep the people entertained, because, you know as well as anybody, John, that baseball can be a slow sport at times, and you need to keep the audience engaged, you need to keep them entertained. And we had a nice rapport together. So, and I think one of the things that really kind of worked was that the generation gap, because Dick, being, 82, and, he started working 7 years ago, so his late 70s, and, I'm now 54. There's a lot to offer there from, my experiences growing up, Dick's experiences growing up, it's kind of like sitting down and talking with your dad about old times and the great game of baseball. And I think that's one of the reasons why it worked so well.
Yeah, once again, John Pielli, joined by former Major League pitcher and current broadcaster for the San Diego Padres, Mark Grant. I got two more questions for you. One of them is, I think about Dick Enberg and his impact on the world of sports, but I also think of the cameo that he did in Naked Gun. And I think of the scene. Obviously, they have the 7 broadcasters there, and there's that highlight of the guy going to catch the ball, and his head falls off. Mel Allen says, "How about that?" And then there's the look of Dick Enberg, and just like shocked and appalled for what he's seeing.
Right.
Did he ever talk to you about that?
Oh yeah, we talked about that all the time. I remember he had a part in Heaven Can Wait, also with Warren Beatty.
Yes.
And he talked about his days, with the Rams, being in movies and stuff, and how, where that was. That wasn't even at a ballpark. He was at some studio somewhere where they set up the table for all the announcers, and how he just was fortunate enough to, because of his career being a broadcaster, that led him to do other things. And obviously, if Dick Enberg was in The Naked Gun, and I'm a big fan of that movie, that all things are going to work out well and all things are going to be good. So that's the other thing about Dick. Going back, when it was the national stuff every week, it was a big game, right? So there really wasn't a lot of time. It was meat and potatoes, football, basketball, baseball, whatever it was. And Dick, the one thing I did discover is that he's got one heck of a sense of humor, because, in those games, those big games, you really don't have time to let loose and show your true sense of humor or your personality.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to where Dick is now doing a regional for the San Diego Padres. We're on every night, 158 games out of 162. You got a chance to let your personality come through. And that's one of the things I discovered, is that he had one heck of a sense of humor, and that's what made it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, Dick is going to be very well missed. Obviously, one of the legendary broadcasters in all of sports, and certainly a person that I, as well as many other people, including yourself, look up to. Last question I want to ask you, Mark. You go by the nickname Mudcat. Now, in regards to, obviously, Jim Mudcat Grant, is there any correlation with that? In regards to, Jim Mudcat Grant and, the years that he played, and obviously there was a reason that he ended up with that nickname.
Well, I'll tell you what, I wish I had the numbers, Jim Mudcat.
Of course, he was a great pitcher.
I'll tell you what, if you're a baseball fan, man, look up his numbers. He had one heck of a career.
He did.
And the reason why, I'll tell you the story quickly. I was in spring training with the Giants my first year, 1984, my first year at Big League Camp. I was 20 years old. And Danny Ozark, the former Phillies manager, was our third base coach under Frank Robinson. And we were doing pitchers fielding practice one day, and Danny Ozark was over by first base as we were covering first base. And, coaches, they give a little rah-rah, a little, clap of the hands. Hey, way to go there, Johnny, or whatever. And, I covered first, made the play. And he goes, hey, way to go, Mudcat. And I was like, wow, Mudcat. Yeah, Grant, Jim Grant, Mark Grant. I thought that was pretty cool. So he's just, of course, he knew him back in the day, because that's, when he was playing and managing back in those days. It just kind of stuck. He started calling me that, and other players heard it, and it was just one of those names that stuck through the years.
All right, Mark, listen, best of luck to you. Appreciate you having a couple minutes to be on the show. And listen, look forward to hearing you next year calling games for the San Diego Padres.
All right, John, thank you so much for your time. I wish everybody a happy New Year, safe holiday season, and be well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mark. And that was Mark Grant, former Major League pitcher and a broadcaster for the San Diego Padres, talking a little bit about his interaction with Dick Enberg. And, one of the guys that I certainly looked up to in the world of broadcasting, the fact that he was able to cover so many different sports, do it all even keel, and look like he belonged in every single thing you do. And we listen to sportscasters now, and they have a favorite sport that they want to cover, and it kind of shows when a guy does, let's say a Joe Buck. He is more of a baseball guy than a football guy. He has that background with his father, Jack, and you could tell when he's doing baseball, there's a lot more passion in it. I mean, in all honesty, he's a better baseball broadcaster than he is a football broadcaster. Dick Enberg can call a snail race, and he would still do it like he loved it, like it was the greatest thing in the world. And you don't really see that in broadcasters today. And it was great getting a chance to talk there with Mark. Love bringing up the cameo in regards to Naked Gun, which, by the way, is my favorite movie in the world by a mile. Once again, John Pielli. This is the Passball Show, the 29th day of December. We're going to get into Pielli's picks, and I'll throw the number out there in case anybody wants to call in. Anything on your mind in a world of baseball, sports, and unifying America. I'll try to save a little time for a message to America before the year ends. But Pielli's picks, we ended up getting ourselves a couple games over 500. We sit for the season at 20-17. 4-2 week last week. We split the 2 Saturday games and then went 3-1 on Sunday. And we're set here with one more week. Now, what I could do, I could go to generic route and only pick 2 games. So if I lose both of those games, I'll finish with a winning record. That's not the way I roll. We're going to pick 6 games. We're going to have a chance to finish with a losing record. But Pielli's picks for the season will end after this week. Obviously, we'll have the cumulative Pielli's picks, which sit there with my 5 baseball predictions that I made earlier and finished with a 2-3 record. So the cumulative record that we sit at right now is 22-20. But we get ready for Week 17's Pielli's picks. First game we're going to go after, we're going to start with the Carolina Panthers against the Atlanta Falcons. And the way that I've been going in regards to the majority of my picks is I feel 2 things. Number one, the momentum. How are both of the teams going? Is one of the teams going in a bad direction and the other one's going in a positive direction? But which team does the game mean more to? And I don't think there's a game out there. Actually, there's one more game that I would say is on the same level, and I'm picking that game also. But the Atlanta Falcons need this game a lot more than the Carolina Panthers. They're given 4 points, so they got to win the game by 5 or more if they're going to take this game. I think the Falcons are going to do that. They've been a little bit of an up and down team this year. Obviously went to the Super Bowl last year. Everybody was expecting automatically that because they made it to the Super Bowl last year, they were the favorite to get back to the Super Bowl this year. I couldn't believe in any more crap than that, because the NFC has been such parity. There is one dominant team each year that nobody ever expects. This year it's the Eagles. This year it's the Los Angeles Rams. Nobody had those teams doing as well as they're doing this year. And nobody had the Atlanta Falcons going as far as they did at the beginning of last season. And then they end up going to the Super Bowl. But I look at the Falcons as a playoff team. I think them making the postseason as the 5th or 6th seed in the National Football Conference is going to put them in a position where they're making that conference better. I want the strongest teams to be in there. Give me the Atlanta Falcons -4 at home against the Carolina Panthers. Moving on, we got the Dallas Cowboys, whose season ended last week when they lost a game that they absolutely needed to win. They are going to Philadelphia in a game that may not necessarily mean a ton to the Philadelphia Eagles. They're locked. They got a first-round bye, but they're also playing without their star quarterback, Carson Wentz. Nick Foles is in a position where he's going to have a chance to lead the Eagles. And you know what? Nick Foles, for himself, has a chance to get himself a starting job as an NFL quarterback next season. The Eagles have not been the same since Wentz went down, but I like them in this spot for 2 reasons. Number one, I think Foles being a quarterback for them for another week gives him more routine with that offense. And I think the Eagles are looking back at their performances over the last couple weeks, and they absolutely cannot be happy with what they've seen. They're looking at a lot of tape. This is going to bring out the best or the worst in the coaching and the leadership on that team. And I'll tell you, if they lay an egg against the Dallas Cowboys here at home, with the season coming to an end and the postseason coming up, I can't expect them to be taken seriously in the postseason. So the Eagles giving 2.5 at home against the Dallas Cowboys. Last reason, I think the Cowboys have given up. They're in a spot where they had aspirations on winning the division, putting themselves in a position to build off of what they did last year when they won the NFC East. It's all over. It's all about 2018. I don't think there's a player on that field that's going to give a damn about playing competitive football. Sure, they're going to play hard. They're going to play to a point where they're not going to try to get hurt. But if the Eagles get off to a 7 or 10-0 lead in the first quarter, I could see this team laying down and just saying, listen, the season's over. There's nothing you could do. There's no way that anything's going to change. They're not going to get to the postseason. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles plus 2.5 at home against the Dallas Cowboys for Game 2. Game 3, I'll tell you, I've been kind of feeding into a lot of the fodder in regards to the media. And one of the great stories of the second half of this season has been that of the San Francisco 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo was traded from the New England Patriots, a deal that Bill Belichick didn't look like he was 100% in agreement on. This was the quarterback that, if it was up to Bill Belichick, he would be the one to take over for Tom Brady. Now, they sat him a couple weeks, but ever since they've put him under center, and obviously they needed an injury to C.J. Beathard for Garoppolo to get a chance, and he has relished in this opportunity. He has looked great. He has looked like he belongs as one of the top 16 quarterbacks in the NFL, which we didn't get a chance to see because he wasn't playing very much, holding a clipboard for Tom Brady. But you see a new atmosphere, a new sense of times changing. 2018 looks like it's going to be a very good year for the San Francisco 49ers, and I feel bad. I'm not one of those that likes to pile on to what the media reports. I like to tell everybody I disagree. I'm believing in the San Francisco 49ers, and I look at the Los Angeles Rams, and yes, the game does mean something to them, but they're heading to the postseason. They won their division. They have a chance to be the second seed in the NFC. But I think the 49ers are rolling. They have some momentum. They're a completely different football team. And I think they're looking at this game as if it's the equivalent of a playoff game. A chance to go to Los Angeles against a team that has earned their right to get to the postseason. And they could play this game like it's a postseason game. So the Rams are giving 3.5 at home, which says something. It really does. It shows that the momentum is swinging towards the San Francisco 49ers, and I think the 49ers can score 4 more points than the Rams. So game number 3, give me the 49ers, minus 3.5 in LA against the Rams. Game 4. This was an interesting one, probably the last game that I ended up picking, and I was a little back and forth on it. I look at the Kansas City Chiefs going to Denver, but going to Denver with their starting quarterback of the future, Patrick Mahomes. He's going to get the start. They're going to arrest Alex Smith. They're getting themselves ready as they're going to be they're going to be the division winner, probably the 4th seed in the AFC. I like them for this reason. I think Mahomes has his chance to put his stamp on the team. And I actually think this may be a decision that Coach Andy Reid could potentially regret as the postseason is about to start. Patrick Mahomes is getting a chance to go under center. He's getting his first chance to run this offense, which down the road is going to be his anyway. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to have such a good performance on Sunday that there's going to be some discussion over whether he should start in the playoffs. And this is a guy that's playing his first game in Week 17, not because of an injury, and there's going to be debate over whether he should be the starter in the postseason game in a division round. As we hit the halfway point here in the Pass Ball Show, as you hear the cuckoo clock, John Pielli, happy to be with you. Hope you enjoyed, if you had a chance to listen earlier in the program, to my interview with former Major League pitcher and current broadcaster for the San Diego Padres, Mudcat Grant. We talked, of course, about the life and the impact that Dick Enberg had in the world of sports and in general. And that interview will be available on YouTube. You can check it out on my site, johnpielli.com, in case you missed it. So we're talking NFL picks. Pielli's picks were in game number 4. And I'm taking the Chiefs, plus 3.5 in Denver. The last reason that I'm thinking this is an easy one for me, the Denver Broncos are going to go through some major changes. Vance Joseph, I believe that he should have a chance to coach the team next year. I don't think he's going to get that chance. And I think the 49ers have the Denver Broncos have a lot of questions. in regards to who's going to be their quarterback. What areas are they going to look to upgrade? Their defense is still pretty good, but offensively they've struggled. And they've had as much of an opportunity as anybody in that division, which, by the way, has been one of the most boring and uninspiring divisions in the entire National Football League. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to take this ball, he's going to run with it, and moving down forward, there's going to be a debate when we're talking about the divisional round of the NFL next week over whether he should start over Alex Smith because he's going to perform this good. So give me Kansas City plus 3.5 in Denver against the Broncos. Game 5. I tell you, I've mentioned the importance in regards to these picks that I've made over the last several weeks, and a lot of emphasis I've put on what team does the game mean more to. And I mentioned about the Falcons at home against the Carolina Panthers, the Tennessee Titans at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're given 3. And I tell you, you're looking at a team that was 8-4, looked like there was no doubt that they were going to the playoffs. It was going to be a matter of whether it was going to be them or Jacksonville that was going to win the AFC South. They've struggled over the last 3. I'm thinking in my head either one of 2 things is going to happen. Either number 1, they're going to lose this game. They're going to go through some major changes, and their coach, Mike Mularkey, is going to lose his job. This is a team that was poised for the postseason. It looked like it was their time under Marcus Mariota. They've lost their last 3. They're sitting there at 8-7, and for some strange reason, they still have a chance after 3 consecutive losses to get themselves to the playoffs. They're at home. It's a divisional game. Both teams are going to bring the best out of each other. And I think the Tennessee Titans are going to be able to pull this off. They're going to look at enough tape over the last 3 weeks over what has not gone well for them, and they can go out there and they're going to win this game by 4 or more. So give me the Titans, minus 3 at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars for game number 5. Game 6. I got to be honest, I was looking at the other games, and there weren't too many other games that intrigued me. I've been intrigued enough by the 5 games that I picked already. You know, I like the Falcons for how much the game means to them and the fact that they're playing a division foe. I could see the best in the Philadelphia Eagles against the Dallas Cowboys. The 49ers, I gave you reasons. The Kansas City Chiefs, I gave you reasons. And the Titans, I gave you reasons. This last game, honestly, is the one game that I'm least certain about out of the 6 that I picked this week. The Buffalo Bills have a chance to get to the postseason with a little bit of help. They're 2.5-point favorites in Miami against the Dolphins. I'm looking at the Dolphins and their situation. Their season ended a couple weeks ago. They are probably looking to their former quarterback, who was injured this year, Ryan Tannehill, to be their quarterback next year. Are they making a coaching change? Maybe. I think it's a little too early to give up on Adam Gase, but he could be one of the ones that are let go on the infamous Black Monday. I think this game means a lot to the Buffalo Bills, and at the very least, they're going to put themselves in the best position to say, hey, you know what? If Baltimore loses, if Tennessee loses, then our season can go on. And in order for their season to go on, they're going to need to win in Miami. The Dolphins, yes, they may not have very much to play for, but I tell you, it would make them feel pretty good if they could end the Buffalo Bills season. Especially if the Ravens or the Titans lose. They could still end the Buffalo Bills season by beating them at home. So I was a little back and forth on this. I am going to go with Buffalo, though. Give me 2.5 at Miami. So Pielli's picks for week number 17, once again, 20-17 record going in. There's a chance if I have a losing record this week, I can finish with a losing record for the season. So give me Atlanta minus 4 at home against the Panthers. Philadelphia plus 2.5 at home against Dallas. San Francisco minus 3.5 at Los Angeles against the Rams. The Kansas City Chiefs plus 3.5 at Denver. The Tennessee Titans minus 3 at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And finally, the Buffalo Bills minus 2.5 at the Miami Dolphins. Pielli's picks for the 29th day of December 2017. Once again, this is John Pielli, Pass Ball Show. I will throw the number out there in case you want to call in. The number is 732-364-3598. Anything that's on your mind in regards to baseball, sports, and unifying America. I haven't gotten much of a chance to spend time talking about the National Hockey League this year. And as we get into the new year, I'm going to work on getting a couple of guests that are hockey-centric. I have a couple in mind. I'm not going to throw any names out there because I don't want to scare anybody with a big name, but I do have a couple very solid guests that I'm looking into bringing into the program as we go into 2018. And I mentioned a couple days ago, I was talking about what hockey means in the metropolitan area. And in all honesty, we followed the game for the last 20, 30 years or so. There's been bits and spurts of some success by our local teams. The New York Islanders, of course, winning those 4 straight Stanley Cups. The New York Rangers winning in 1994. And you got the 3 cups by the Devils in this a few years afterwards. So there's been times where one of the teams have been pretty dominant. But now looking at it at a time, I think all 3 teams are going in a very good direction. Obviously, the New Jersey Devils have been an absolute shock as they sit right now at 22-14. And one of the things that I'm always going to talk about every time I mention the hockey on the Pass Ball Show, I'm not going to give you this crappy loss and overtime losses like there's something different. I understand that you get an extra point if you lose a game in overtime or in a shootout, but it's still a loss. So if you won 22 games and you lost 9 and you lost 5 in overtime, your record is 22-14. And that's what the Devils sit at right now. The Rangers, as they are holding on to the 7th seed in the first wild card spot, are 22-17. So are the New York Islanders. So you're looking at teams as we're getting ready. The Winter Classic's coming up. It's going to be the Rangers and the Buffalo Sabres at Citi Field. I'm looking forward to that. Both of these New York teams, I tell you, have the ability to do some damage in the postseason if they can play a little more consistent. Now, they've played well enough to, inspire the thought that they could be postseason teams. And if you look at the other teams in the conference, in the Eastern Conference, nobody else has an over 500 record. Carolina, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Florida, Montreal. And I tell you, you look at Detroit, and Detroit for about 20 years was one of the most dominant forces in the entire NHL year in and year out. And I still don't look at them, number one, as an Eastern Conference team, but number two, a team that you expect to be so good for such a long time. It's kind of weird not seeing them as dominant as they were. That being said, I think the Rangers and the Islanders are both in good spots as we hit the second half of the season. I think they can get themselves places in the postseason and potentially make the Eastern Conference fun this year. The New Jersey Devils, listen, they're playing, I think, a little bit over their heads, but a lot has come together. As they play the Buffalo Sabres tonight at home, they have a chance to win their entire 6-game homestand, something that you don't see too often in the NHL. But do I think the Devils are an elite top of the conference team? No. And where they sit right now, there are how many teams? They're tied for second in the conference with their 49 points behind Tampa Bay, who's sitting there at 27-9. But I think the Devils are a playoff team. They've proven it. They've proven that their team has come together maybe a year early. They have a lot of younger players there. Their goaltenders played very well. They got Hall, who's been a very big impact on that team. The deal that they made for Sami Vatanen has certainly helped them out. He's done a very good job there as well. So, looking forward to some fun hockey as we're getting towards the end of the season. And it's one of those weird sports because, we could talk about football and baseball where there does seem to be a little more interest in following the sports during the regular season. Not so much in the NHL. But when you do have all three of the metropolitan teams, the Devils, the Rangers, and the Islanders, all at least competing in a positive manner, I think it makes the regular season a little more compelling. And the Winter Classic's coming up, and I'll tell you, for what those games do in regards to attendance at these big stadiums, it does even better on a national level. And I think it's one of the greatest things the NHL could have done, playing a game outside, but doing it on New Year's Day. And I look forward to, as we've done over the past 10 years, the Winter Classic, which this year will feature the New York Rangers and the Buffalo Sabres. Once again, John Pielli, Pass Ball Show. The number is 732-364-3598. And as we finish up the program today, and I feel like I've spoken pretty fast. So if there's anything that you want to get to that you're not sure that I said, if I said what I thought I said, be a good show to rewind and fast forward, which we get a chance to do through Periscope, in addition to Facebook Live as well as YouTube, which we'll produce afterwards. I made this show about a couple things. I've talked about baseball and the history of the game, which I feel I have an ability to throw out there to you and maybe throw some information out that perhaps you didn't know. But talking also about the world of sports, and we brought up many different controversial topics that could be brought up here, whether we're talking about LeVar Ball, somebody that's polarizing, or A-Rod. I mean, there's always different takes that we could put on important things that are going on in the world of sports. But one thing that I want to make sure that I keep getting a message out there about is the lack of interest that seems to be about unifying America. And this is something that is very passionate to me and means a lot to a lot of people, but unfortunately not enough people care about this aspect of the country and the way we sit right now. And the problem is, number one, is whenever anybody speaks about the country or the United States of America, it's automatically assumed that they're talking politics. And I want to shut that argument off right away, because this will never be a political show. I will never throw political opinions out there. I may throw a little bit of an opinion about how I feel about something, but I'm not going to get political, nor will I ever let politics impact this show whatsoever. I've said all along, the problem is the political party system that we have that's so polarizing and is forcing people to take sides. There's two major terrorist groups that exist in this country, and they're called Republicans and Democrats. They exist. They're domestic terrorists. They are doing everything they can. And if you're affiliated with one of these parties, you're part of the terrorism that's going on. The terrorism continues to divide this country and keeps us away from looking at the ideals and the reasons that the United States of America has succeeded for over 200 years. And the fact that we have the ability to speak our minds, to have differences, not only in opinions, but differences in upbringing, differences in race, differences in sex, sexual orientation, and religion, and the fact that this whole country can bring in every difference that exists in this entire world. There is no American ideal. Not even a language that's spoken in this country is set as the language of the country. There's diversity that exists in this country that is so different from anywhere else in the world. But the problem is the majority of the people that are citizens of this country are too stupid to realize everything that's special that we have. And when we're dividing each other by making it such a big deal to stand on our soapbox and talk about, our big political beliefs. Nobody cares about your damn political beliefs. Maybe if we stopped focusing on that and stopped standing on our soapboxes, ranting about how we feel individually, we're so much better than anybody else, or making people feel sorry for ourselves because we're these victims that everybody else treats so poorly, it's time to do something for yourself. It's time to speak amongst a group of people. Listen to others. Stop being ignorant and saying that the only thing that exists for you is your own little group that, by the way, you segregated yourself by putting yourself into, and you're contributing to the divide that exists in this country. The bottom line is every single difference that exists in this country is what should bring us together. It should bring us towards the center of the melting pot that we are in this country. I said, when you say, what is it that makes somebody American? It's just like, and I've said this before about American cheese. People eat American cheese all the time, but it's not an actual cheese. It's a blend of all other different cheeses that are from all over the world that make a unique taste, and that's why when you have a different American cheese, it tastes different from a one that you had before. America is the same way. There is no definition of what an American is. The problem is so many different people are trying to define what an American is. And that's contributing to the problems that we have in this country. So as the new year comes in, and as we get ready for 2018, rather than sitting there on your soapbox talking about what makes you better than everybody else, or you sit there with your head down talking about why everybody hates you, or people don't like you because of what you are, whether it's something that you've chosen to do or something that you can't control being based off the way you look. It's time to start talking about with each other what makes us the greatest nation in the world. And what makes us the greatest nation in the world is everything that is different about me, about you, about the third person. The fact that you could have any different upbringing or belief or religion or race, and we could all exist together as Americans and as equals. So rather than saying you're better than anybody or sitting here playing the poor, woe is me, oh, I'm treated differently because of whatever my difference is, look at all the different opportunities that we have and stop making excuses. 2018 should be about responsibility and accountability for each individual person, not about blaming others and making excuses for why you're not doing whatever it is that you want to do. Everybody has a talent. Some talents are considered to be on higher stages than others, but it doesn't make a talent that's smaller not mean as much. Everybody should have the ability to do anything that they want to. And you know what? Years ago, a lot of people did. And I'll tell you right now, as we sit in 2017 going into 2018, we have the biggest opportunity, the best opportunity ever for anybody, regardless of who you are, to be able to do great things. You know, and there's plenty of reasons why you can. Stop talking about reasons why you can't. As we move forward, I just want to tell everybody, Happy New Year. God bless you. We'll be back with you either probably the second day of January on Tuesday night. We got some guests lined up for next week here on the Pass Ball Show. So if you haven't had a chance to hear a lot of the different things that I've talked about, I put all my videos on YouTube. And the thing that I do that's different on that is I'm ready to sit here and write a novel. I'm ready to put down every single thing that I could possibly think of that I've covered in a show that I just did. And I put that out there for you to read it. And I'm not asking you to watch my show. I'm asking you to browse through the subject matter of what I talk about on each and every one of my shows. Because I promise you, if you go through enough of them, you'll find something that appeals to you. And you'll find an opinion that you're going to want to hear. And certainly something that you want to contribute and be part of the show. So check out my channel, John Pielli. Search for me there. I'm actually going to open up an Instagram account after after waiting a little while. It's something that hasn't appealed to me, but we're going to get into the world of Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter at John_Pielli, and of course, Pass Ball Show fan page on Facebook. So God bless you. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.